on one of these bills.
I was going to suggest that, Chairman. What you just stated, I was going to suggest maybe allow public testimony in the meantime, if it's more efficient for the committee.
Well, somebody, which one of y'all want to explain the gist of the bill?
I can explain the gist.
Well, then you come on up here.
And if I can bring,
Former representative.
if I can bring the father of medical cannabis.
All right.
Give us overall principles.
What we'll do is we'll allow former representative and colleague Lindsay and Gravely to just speak on the gist of the bill until Senator Brass can come. We've got 20 minutes before we have to be at rules. We will do rules, and then immediately after rules, we'll reconvene. All right.
Mr. Chairman, for the record, I'm Edward Lindsay. I'm with the law firm of Denton's, and we represent Botanical Sciences, which is one of the license holders in our state. If I can just sort of give the highlights here, and I would like also to recognize at the table is former Representative Michael Gravely, who is, for want of a better term, the father of medical cannabis in our state, who can sort of speak as to the overall principles of this bill. Basically, if I can sort of walk folks through very briefly what the bill does. If you look at sort of hitting some of the highlights, obviously, Senator Brass can hit some of the more details. It changes the term in Section 2, changes the term from low-TH oil in our law to medical cannabis, which more reflects exactly what is involved in our state. At Section 3.1 of the bill, it sets the potency cap at 50% up from 5%. That's primarily as part of the process here, in which we are allowing an oil-based inhalant to more readily get to the patient in terms of their pain. In section by the lines 99 through 143, in terms of changing the possession limits from 20 fluid ounces to 2.0 ounces of medical cannabis or its equivalent. If I may, I'm sort of going through my notes here, Mr. Chairman, sort of hitting the highlights. A big part of the bill is also found at, let's see, whether lines 430 through 446 amends the definition of caregiver, removes the legal guardianship requirements for caregivers of adult patients. This simply is there to make it easier for the patient, to, particularly in institutions, to be able to get the necessary medical cannabis for their needs. A key part of the bill is also found in lines 447 through 474 under conditions. Sort of puts us in line with the rest of the country, which Representative Gravely can speak to, in which it removes severe and end stage from the conditions. It also broadens the definition of Crohn's disease to inflammatory bowel disease, which I believe the doctors here might be able to say is a more accurate statement as to the conditions that are being included. It also adds lupus to the conditions that would be permitted. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I would turn it over to Michael Gravely.
Yeah, before we do that, I want to be sure we're working from the same LC, because those numbers didn't match on the 470. LC 339799S.
Yes, sir. That's as passed by the Senate. I believe
this is a committee substitute that has passed out, but the copy I've got doesn't have a line 474.
We're working off of line 778, so we don't have that updated version, Mr. Chairman.
You have the version as passed by the Senate. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, what line was in question?
Well, I was just noting that
I may have misspoken, Mr. Chairman. Regarding the conditions, it's lines 429 through lines 456. My apologies, Mr. Chairman. And we are operating off of LC 339799S as passed by the Senate.
that is correct. 9799, yes. Before I start taking questions, as I read through the bill, and I was on that back in the day when we did the medical cannabis, it appears to me that this is an upgrade by changing the definitions from low THC to medical cannabis. We're dealing with end-stage disease. To allow that, we added a couple of new terminologies for certain diseases. We've changed the requirement from 5 to 50 milligrams, and we're allowing a different delivery system for the docs.
Correct, Mr.
So
Chairman.
that their patients can be better remedied by this. And before the questions get started to the committee, I would encourage you to take a good look, not to be confused with CDB type drinks and those type of things that we'll hear later on during the session. But this is strictly, remember, this is for medical use.
That's right.
So
It's best to remember that what we're trying to do here is make sure that the people of Georgia who are looking for this relief go and utilize a product that goes through high test in terms of its purity, in terms of trying to protect the consumer, as opposed to going to one of these shops in which they will seek that kind of relief through the hemp, which it does not necessarily go through the safety protections that exist from our medical cannabis.
correct. All right, Chairman Martin.
I have a couple of questions, but I mean, the crux here is you're just expanding who can get access to this and increasing the intensity of the THC.
In part, yes.
In part, or I mean, that's exactly what it does. I mean, if
Well,
not
that's
for
what,
that, you wouldn't do
I'm
anything
sorry,
else,
but
right?
it's doing other things in addition to that, but yes. it's doing that.
What other things?
Well, we've already mentioned those in terms of changing the name of the,
You could, isn't it true you could hardly call it low THC oil when it's 50%? It's not really low THC oil anymore, so I understand why you're changing it to medical cannabis. Isn't that true?
that's part of it is basically coming up with a product to meet the needs of the people of Georgia, yes.
Okay, so we got a stronger product and we're using it in more places.
In terms of the conditions, yes.
Right, because you're not using, the chairman, is it not true that the chairman spoke that we were previously dealing with end-stage diseases in certain areas, and now we're striking that language, so the first day you're diagnosed with one of these, you'd be eligible for medical cannabis, up to 50%.
With the recognition from the doctor, yes.
I mean, you'd be,
As approved by the doctor, yes. We're putting more into the hands of the medical professionals, yes, sir.
does the gentleman not worry a little bit about the way that started? Something like this sort of started a little over a decade ago with people prescribing opioids early, overprescribing that. I mean, do you really need to go 10 times as much THC? I mean, this is a question for a lesser condition. I mean, it just seems like we're expanding the scope because we need something to sell.
No, we're not banning the scope for something to sell. We're banning the scope for it to actually meet the needs of the patients as shown by the experience shown in other states.
Well, in California, it's not true that Colorado legalized it. If that's what we're trying to do, let's just say it.
No, we're not trying to legalize it, Mr. Chairman.
The language on the paper is not true that this oil, and then you strike the section that allows anybody to vape THC medical cannabis. You strike the prohibition to doing this.
We do strike the prohibition because
all levels.
It provides a delivery system to meet the needs of the patient.
But would it not be available for anybody that was using a low THC oil or a consumable in a vaping device?
subject to the permission of the doctor, yes. We're putting it in the hands of the doctor and the patient.
And I can't recall, Mr. Lindsay and Mr. Gravely, I know you were here. When we heard this before, we were focused, is it not true, on the level of THC, and that's not what we were trying to do. We're trying to have a minimum level of THC, and we'll keep it low, and now we're going 10 times that and reducing the severity of a disease in order to get it. Just a serious question, because, I mean, you can tell I have some pause here, but a serious question. Do you not see that there would be a one-size-fits-all situation wouldn't work, and that the medical cannabis at various stages would need and should be different amounts at the THC? But the bill doesn't require that.
Thank you. Let me say this. My name's Micah Gravely. I've served in this body for 10 years. I was a co-signer, a co-sponsor, and then an author of this particular measure for several years. I'm here today as a private citizen. I'm not currently employed by anybody other than my other real job, and it has nothing to do with this. I'm here because I believe in this issue. But I think we've learned, to answer your point, we started out with low THC oil. We had requested some higher amounts early on after the medical professionals that we spoke with, and then also the University of Georgia study that came through. However, I think the 5% is where everyone at the time, 10 years ago, was able to agree. I think we've learned a lot in the last decade, quite frankly. We've been able to understand, and I'll give this example, multiple sclerosis, when such disease is diagnosed as severe end stage. I'm working with a person right now who has multiple sclerosis. It's not severe or at end stage, but the response her body has had to THC oil has been unbelievable. Unbelievable. How would I be able to tell this person, or what would it be like to be able to tell this person, think of the treatment you've received in another state and how your body has responded to this disease, how this has been able to change your life in regard to your children, to your marriage. But when you come to our state, I've got to wait for you to get to severe or end stage before you can have this same treatment. And she's having this treatment in a state that mirrors Georgia politically, mirrors Georgia conservatively. Matter of fact, I don't know if y'all have one, but when we talk about an inhalable, which is the delivery system that she's receiving, because number one, back then we were starting an issue that, number one, we had to educate folks on. In the last 10 years, there has been no compromise of our THC medical program in Georgia, low THC medical program in Georgia. No compromise whatsoever. There have been no deaths. There have been no overdoses. We are still not a smoking state. We are still not a, now someone can make a comment, but you cannot smoke legally in this state. Now, you can go outside this Capitol and someone's smoking it right down the road. I smelled it when I drove in, but that doesn't mean it's legal. I mean, people are, Friday night in Buckhead, people are exceeding the illegal limit of alcohol. That doesn't mean that the law is that they're within the law. So my point is this, I'm going to hold this up. Georgia's one of 2 states. The green states have active medical cannabis programs. They also have inhalable, the delivery system. We're not asking for smoking. If you'll see in this bill, there is no flower in this bill. This is just an inhalable. Us and Alabama are the only 2 that have medical programs in the United States of America that do not have an inhalable. So when you go down to Parkinson's, when you go down to some of these other diseases, when we first started this measure, there was a lot of caution. There was folks that were apprehensive. So we we worded it in a way that said, okay, let's at least be diligent and say end stage or severe end stage. But we know now that this is helping people immediately. And it doesn't have to be end stage. Imagine having a splitting headache or a migraine, and you go to get an aspirin, and you're only allowed to get one, but the one you've got has to be cut in 10 pieces, and you only get a 10th to address a splitting headache. Why not just take 2 aspirin? And that's all we're asking from this particular measure here. When you see, I'll just go in my own family. I've got a nephew that's autistic. We work with him in our church program. Our church is fully dedicated to a special needs program, and multiple kids in that program at our church treat with cannabis oil. But they're limited, and some of these kids, some need higher, some need lower. So it's just the matter of, number one, we are still not a smoking state at all. We're not a recreational state. And I think that's because of the guardrails and the boundaries that this body and the body across the hall has put together and maintained, much to the constituency of this state and the programs that we've put together. But we've also been educated and understand how some of these diseases react to the medicine that they're getting. And that's all we're asking, is to allow the folks that qualify in this state to have the right amount that helps their disease. And they're still treating with a doctor. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
If I might, there's a number of the members of the committee, we're on rules, and we're going to suspend action on this bill to, I'd say 11:30, okay, so that we can bring it back at that time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. This committee will be at recess until 11:30, and hopefully by that time we'll have, hopefully the folks that are here to testify will still be available. All right. Now, come on up, Senator. I apologize, but we've all had an interesting morning so far. All right, we're going to start over again, and you have a version of 220, and we're back to the original version. Now, this has not gone through a subcommittee. I wanted the full committee to hear this presentation. And this deals with medical cannabis, not recreational cannabis. This is medical cannabis. Senator?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. So this is Senate Bill 220, working off of CSFA. So as the bill is passed through the Senate. And first I want to tell you quickly why this issue is important to me. So when we set out on the study committee back in 2018, myself and our former colleague and friend Micah Gravely, Representative Gravely, we co-chaired that committee together, both House and Senate, because we knew that if it was a House idea, the Senate wouldn't go for it. If it was a Senate idea, the House wouldn't go for it. So we insisted on it being together, and we set out to do it together, and we did it. In the final meeting of that study committee, got a letter from a world-renowned neurologist at the Shepherd Center, and that letter was in support of medical cannabis for MS patients. I thought I recognized the doctor's name, and I quickly sent a picture of that letter to my mom, and I said, "Mom, do you recognize this doctor?" And she said, "Yes, that's my doctor and been my doctor for 30 years. My mom has had MS, or was diagnosed with MS back in like 1999. So here I am with the ability to give my mom's doctor another tool in the tool chest to treat my mother. Now, she's never used it. I don't think she ever will need it, but it is there should she need it. And that is why I'm passionate about this issue, and I'm passionate for every patient that has one of the diagnoses that is listed. And so that is why why we're bringing Senate Bill 220. The commission, our Medical Marijuana Commission, or actually it's called the Low-THC Oil Commission, they did a listening session, listening tour with patients and doctors. They did it over the summer. And basically it was a survey of where the program's working, where it's not working, you know, and so some of the things that came back are what is reflected in this bill. And I'll just quickly walk you through that bill. So one of the things that came back in that listening tour was that the term low THC oil was very confusing to both patients and doctors. And so with that, we're changing the name from low THC oil program to the medical cannabis. So you'll see strikes through that throughout the first few pages. And then when you get into, I'm looking on page 4, we get into definition of medical cannabis, and we had to make a few changes there because we're, again, not calling it low THC oil. Now on line 88, this is one of the controversial parts of the bill, and there's 3 parts, and I'll cover them all. Number 1 is we want to change the percent from 5% cap to 50%. We heard again in that listening tour, it came back that it wasn't enough percentage for some of these patients to work. So that is the purpose of that. If you look at, there's 18 other states that are medical marijuana only states, medical cannabis states, 18 of them. The lowest in all of those is 50%. The highest cap is 70, so that ranges anywhere in medical only states. It ranges from 50 to 70, and we are currently at 5. And so between the patients that need it and allowing doctors to prescribe down like they do in just about every other drug out on the market, they can change the dosage and they can change the percent themselves, or at least recommend it. So that is the purpose, going from 5 to 50. Moving on through the bill, if you get into page 7, you'll see some strikes through some of the penalties. Now, the penalties are still covered in 144 through 152. We did change because we changed the ounces. We're changing it from fluid ounces to regular ounces, so that ounces is going to 2 ounces versus, I think it was 20 fluid ounces or something fluid ounces. Now, 153 through 164, you're going to see strikes through all of those. That is pertaining to the research facilities. After we passed the program in 2019, we came back, I believe, in 21. And we took out some of the research stuff. And so this is one thing, this is really just cleanup language because we actually never took out the penalties for that. So that is what 153 through 164 is. Moving on, let's see, just more definitions on page 10. Continuing page 11, we are still just changing the name from low THC oil to medical cannabis. And then on page 12, lines 274 through 279, we're making it clear that the commission can engage in public awareness activities. Moving on, in lines 326 and 327, because the licensees are not allowed to go out and educate public or the doctors, we're allowing third-party associations can do that on their behalf. They just can't promote one company over another or one product over another. They can just educate on the benefits and negatives of the use of this medicine. So moving on, starting on line 395, I'm on page 16. That's section 3-7. We're repealing that section. This is the second part that is controversial, and this is vaping. The reason for vaping is some patients need immediate action from the medicine. if, one of the conditions allowed is under epilepsy or some sort of seizure disorder. If someone is about to have a seizure, taking oil and waiting 1 hour, 2 hours, however long it takes, is not going to help that patient. So the need for vaping or the need for immediate action is there. My original version of this bill was going to allow flower and allow smoking, and then talked with Senator Watson, who's obviously a physician. We didn't feel like that could pass the Senate, and plus he wasn't for that, and so I agreed to take that part out and allow the vaping. But we do need that immediate action for some of these patients. Again, moving on. Section 3-10 on page 18. This was actually done on the floor. I did it as a floor amendment, and it's allowing the caregivers to go pick up the medicine. So this, in some of our nursing homes with Alzheimer's and dementia patients, they need it, but they can't leave the facility, so they need somebody that can go get it for them. Plus, you might have someone with severe autism or various other, maybe a cancer patient going through chemo, can't physically drive, and so they got to have somebody that can go get it for them. So that was the purpose of that. Now, getting into, on page 19, this is the conditions. This is the third and final, I'd say the last controversial thing, major controversial part of this bill. First thing is we're changing Crohn's disease to inflammatory bowel disease, and we're adding lupus. Now, the purpose of that was back before, when we set up the study committee in 2018, we added a provision with that law. We did it on Sine Die of 2018, it was 2018. And that provision said that in order to add an illness or take away an illness, DPH, in conjunction with the Composite Medical Board, had to make recommendations. So we received a letter from both. It's actually a joint letter from the two of them, and they asked that we make those changes. Number one, changing Crohn's disease to IBS, and then 2, adding lupus. So that was our good law working. And then the other part we did was we've struck through when such disease is diagnosed as severe or end stage. We did that on almost all of them. We left it under peripheral neuropathy, and except we did strike end stage because there's no such thing as end stage peripheral neuropathy. So we did leave severe there. That was to make sure like patients with carpal tunnel weren't going to be using the product. And then we left under PTSD, we still left the requirement of 18, and then under autism, we still left it there, but also has to be 18 unless severe or end stage. So, but one thing we did come back, because we removed that provision on severe or end stage, we came back and added this language, and it's starting on line 447, and it says, condition means any of the following, provided that the patient's symptoms associated with any such condition can reasonably be expected to be relieved by the use of medical cannabis, and the potential benefits of such use to the patient outweigh the potential health risks that such use might pose to the patient. And I think that is a little more clear for our doctors. Again, if you read the report from that listening tour, just the confusion around severe, determining when severe, was tough, and so that's the purpose of why we took those out. But I still wanted some sort of safeguard in there, and so I added that provision under condition. So that's really kind of the meat and potatoes of the bill and the need for the bill, and I'm sure there are plenty of questions, and I'm more than happy to yield at your.
Thank you, Senator. Number 17, Representative Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, a couple of questions. On line 88, you explain why to cap it at 50%. Is that because our list of uses may not require 70%? Is that the reason why you cap it in at 50%?
I'll be honest, the cap of 50 for me was more of a political decision, deciding what I can pass through the Senate and what I can't. My original version had no cap. And so when we looked at the other medical cannabis states, 18 of them, I felt like going with that lower cap was going to be more palatable to the Senate and hopefully to the House as well. So that's the sole purpose for that. There are probably going to be some patients that may need more than that 50%, and they're just, they're going to have to take more of the product, and that's, but going from 5 to 50 is a large leap, politically speaking, and so that is really the main purpose.
Okay. And my last question, if I may do a follow-up, Mr. Chair. On line 464 and wherever else you have at least the age of 18. So what about for my constituents that may have children on the spectrum and they're under the age of 18? Can they not have access to this medicinal?
So the doctor would have to consider it severe autism under the age of 18. And one of the reasons we kept that provision in was just because the brain is still developing at that age, and really it's past 18, but at 18 they're considered an adult. But yeah, if it's not considered severe, then no, they would not qualify.
Because I have one constituent where her daughter were having like seizures.
She would qualify under seizures.
Oh, she will?
Yeah, so if you, let's see.
Because I didn't see that.
Yeah, seizures is on here. I just got to find it. Line 456, seizure disorders related to the diagnosis of epilepsy or trauma-related head injury. So.
Okay.
I think they would call it, but that would be up for a doctor to determine that.
All right. Thank you.
Kevin Carpenter.
Thank you, Chairman. Senator Brass, question. I'm just trying to think about the logistics of acquiring the product. So if it's a 2-ounce max that an individual can have in their possession, how many cartridges is that? Because to me it seems like if you're going to the dispensary to get your medicine, that seems pretty limiting.
Yeah, so the 2 ounces, I'm told, if you get it in capsule form, that's enough to supply you for 30 days. And okay. Some of these patients are having to drive 4 hours across the state, and so we didn't want to make them. The original bill I introduced, actually, I took it down to 1 ounce, but that was because I was thinking of flour. Mm-hmm. And I'm told 1 ounce of flour is a lot, so I thought that was more than enough. And but then in talking with the commission, that capsule and that 30-day would be very helpful, and that was why we did the 2 ounces.
I got you, because that's just my concern from an efficiency standpoint. If you're having to go get a 2-day supply every 2 days, how do you live your normal life? The other comment would be if you've got a medical provider that's going like a caregiver, mm-hmm. making them go to the store every 2 days is pretty inconvenient as well. So.
Right, but once a month I think is
that's reasonable.
It's still going to be a pain, but again, there's. What we don't want is we don't want excess out there. I think we've learned that from the opioid epidemic. When people have leftover drugs, people tend to take them.
Sure.
And so we did want to limit it to a certain extent.
And then one follow-up, and I don't know if you have this information now, but I know you talked about doctors prescribing down. Is there any information out there in other states that have a higher number? How many what percentage trades down?
So,
or is it always hey, if it's 70, 90% of it's 70? some of it's 50, but the majority of it's still going out at 70, if that makes sense.
Well, and so I misspoke a little bit. So the doctors actually in Georgia aren't allowed to prescribe. They don't prescribe the medicine. They essentially sign off that these patients have one of these 7, or I think we're up to 19 conditions. So there's 2 conditions the doctors have to do to even be able to do that. Well, that's one of the 2. The other one is they have to register with DPH as a medical marijuana physician, or I don't know what the technical term is, but they register with DPH, and then they sign off on the condition. So they actually, technically aren't making recommendations. They just say that it can help, and they're saying that, the benefits, the potential benefits of such use could outweigh the symptoms of what this patient has. That's essentially what they're doing. Now, it's really going to be the way our law is crafted, and I don't necessarily agree with this, but federal law is also part of this as well. It's going to be really up to the patients to decide, they probably should dose up and not dose down. So, we've got patients that are at 5%, and essentially they are dosing up right now. They're having to, take, instead of 1 tincture, they might be doing 2. They might be doing 10. If they're doing 10, well, then they would just need 1 of the 50%. So, and what this also allows is the license holders, the manufacturers, they can make it in different doses. They can do it in 50, 40, 30, 20, and the labeling is there. And so that'll help the patients as well. But unfortunately, the way our laws are crafted, and it's just a matter of what we can pass and what we can't, it is solely up to the patients to figure out how much they can take.
All right. We got them all lit up now. Chairman Jaspers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Brass, I think for me, I would like for you to give me this report from the commission, because I think you have some knowledge I don't have.
Sure.
And
it's public. It's public record. I pulled it online.
Well, if you just fire it to me, because I think you got some background here that I don't have. That
sure.
I have concerns.
You have it. You just didn't know you had it.
Yeah, it's out there somewhere, like everything. But on the 50% going from 2 or 5 to 50, is there any research that shows that that's an appropriate level? It's not 35, 25, 50, whatever. Is it just, I think, like you said, it was a political decision, but there's no.
There's technically there is no recognized research in the country, this country, around cannabis, because it is a Schedule I drug. Meaning the feds have said for, 100 years now that it has no medical value. Yet in countries all over the world, there are reports and there is research around cannabis. We just simply don't recognize it. So until the feds get it out of Schedule I and into Schedule II or below, we're never going to have any research on it. So the only real research we do have is patients that have been taking this since 2019 when we passed the law. So that's where our research is, and that's where the listening tour that I'll be more than happy to share with you. I'll walk you straight to the link for it. You can read it there, and that's where our research is, field research, good old-fashioned way.
Practical is what you would say. On this, I guess when you maybe write a question down a moment ago, when we talked about the doctor, all he's doing is saying, Rick, this is something you could use, it may help. So on the other end of the seller, the guy that you're going to that's going to provide you
the dispensary.
The dispensary.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any check and balance on their end? I mean, of what they're telling people, physician says use this, but now,
Right. So I will say they are subject matter experts. If there's not a doctor sitting in there per se. Now I toured a dispensary down in Florida, and I walked out of there and I said, I told the person that took me, I said, essentially Florida's legalized marijuana. And they said, oh no, you got to have a card. And I said, yeah, but their list of conditions, it got a little out of control, and pretty much anybody can get a card down there. And I said, but the difference is when you walk into the dispensary, there's people that actually can make a recommendation on what your symptoms are and what strand of cannabis they may have. And they were very knowledgeable, and they take pride in that. And I said, the difference, I walk in there, let's say I have a card, I walk in there, I'm going to have somebody that has some knowledge of this product and how it can help me. And then I'm only going to get enough supply to last me 30 days. And then I've got to come back in. I said, now, if I turn around and walk into a liquor store to treat my back pain, and I go ask the clerk there, what do you recommend for back pain? They're going to give me a 30-day, or they might give me a 100-day supply of tequila, and I can walk back in the next day and ask them if they got any other recommendations. I'll get a 30-day supply of vodka. And so that's kind of, where I think we got to think differently than what we've been thinking for the last 100 years in this state and really in this country. Is we've got this stigma around cannabis, and we're so scared of it that we forget the big picture, and we forget these people with 19 conditions is all we're talking about, of people we're trying to help with something besides opioids, something that has obviously helped these people. I mean, during Representative Gravely and our study committee, we heard from a mother whose daughter was having 100 seizures a day, and then they tried cannabis and went to having 2 to 3 a week. That's a medicine to me.
Sure.
I don't need research to tell me that. I don't need a paper from a doctor telling me that. That's real. And if that were my child, I'd be doing the same thing. Yeah. And I know I went all around your question, and I tried to answer it.
We were there.
Sorry, I got on a soapbox.
But if I can, Mr. Chairman, a couple more. So at the dispensary, I come in with my prescription. This is just a logistic thing. I'm just curious about. So do they take that prescription?
You're not coming in with a prescription. You're coming in with a card.
Okay, I come in with a card.
Your doctor has signed off that you have one of these conditions. The doctor then sends that to DPH with the form they filled out, and then DPH then either mails you the card or they mail it to your local health department and you go pick it up. So you're walking in with essentially a license to purchase.
Yes, sir. So just sort of like your vodka question I'm going to ask.
Okay.
So I can go to Lauren's dispensary
Mm-hmm.
and then go that afternoon. I get what I want to. Can I then take that card and go to this dispensary? How do they limit me just dispensary shopping or going to 2 different places and getting more? I'm just curious.
I believe it's all logged in with DPH.
Yeah, I'm just.
So I'm pretty certain that's all. And there's industry experts here. I'm sure they can answer that question. But I believe there's a tracking system where they file everything with DPH. Okay. So you couldn't do that.
And my last one is that in states that have seen this change, is there any evidence that there are more providers, more usage by license holders that has increased?
I didn't understand your question.
So like in states that have went up to 50% or what?
They didn't go up. They started at 50.
Or 70 or 0.
We're the only one that started at 5. We're the only one that started below 50 to my knowledge.
So going to 50, have they seen, do they have more people participating? They have more providers creating cards than we do now?
I don't know the answer to that. I haven't. Are you talking about? I guess you're talking about more doctors
that are participating in the program, and also
Yes.
then using of more patients that taking advantage of the
I would imagine there'd be more patients taking advantage of the program. And that is, again, for me, the purpose of this bill is not to expand the program, it's to expand access for those that are eligible for the program.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Thank you. Mr. McCollum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, thank you for not adding glaucoma to this list. Just kidding. So, I have a question. I appreciate you bringing this as a Desert Storm veteran. I know this is huge for veterans, and I know it's very successful. I'd much rather see them taking this than using this than opioids, for sure. My only concern is, and I've asked you this before, so this is a vape pen, correct, that you smoke and the smell, I mean, you know, obviously smoke comes out and it has a
Well, vape comes out.
yeah,
which,
but it still has
which vaporizes,
right.
you know, within seconds.
But it still has the pungent smell, I guess. And this is my
For about a
question.
second, yes.
Yeah. So this is my question. So we really, this isn't really against your bill, but my question is, so we do this, and I'm standing in line at McDonald's with my 6 kids, and somebody comes in and it's vaping because obviously they have a medical card, and I know a lot of times they need it then, but we have no guardrails at all. That's, you know, obviously they'll have a sign on the door that says no vaping, but if they say, well, I've got a medical card, I need it right now, you know, our other things that we have in place for alcohol, you know, you can't drive down the road drinking, and I know me and you've had this conversation, and you can't walk down the street with a beer in your hand, which I know there again, if you need it, you need it, if it's a medical emergency or whatever, et cetera, et cetera. So I guess my question is, do you feel like that maybe in a future bill or something we need to kind of clean up some, you know, guardrails of some of those things that you can't do this stuff obviously in public, you know, per se?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're not touching any of those laws, so whatever laws are on the books would apply. And if it became a problem, or even if we want to head it off before it becomes a problem, I'm all for it.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Number 15, that would be,
Yes, sir. I'll try to break a couple questions.
what's your number?
Number 15.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Brass, I just want to go back to something you said earlier, just as it relates to, you know, THC in general. When you were talking about somebody under 18, you know, not having access to it unless it was a severe situation.
Severe autism, that's correct.
Right, yeah, just but you said that because, and you said the reason for that was because the brain's still developing.
Correct.
So I just wanted, you know, is not true that was you kind of noticing that it is a known fact that THC does have detrimental effects on a developing brain.
If abused, yes,
No,
just
no,
like
again,
anything else. Correct.
Chairman, I'm not trying to be adversarial at that.
No.
You made a good point there, and I was just acknowledging that for us all here, that it is not true. Where you're pointing this makes sense. My concern is this, and help me with this, because we had 5% in THC was where we came out, because when we heard this at 2018 and before, it was the cannabidiol oil, that was the portion of it. It was the CBD that was the medicinal part, and we were trying to cut down the THC. We now seem to have moved toward, we need THC for the medicinal side. Do you remember those conversations?
Yeah, I don't remember THC not being a part of the conversation. I mean, I helped co-chair the study committee that set up the program, so THC was always a part of the conversation, and that was why it was such a tough issue.
I understand it, but that's why it was limited at 5% at that time.
Well, that, and it was the political reality at the time was that was as good as we were going to get.
So my question
and the
is,
political reality's changed because our state is changing. We're changing. We're evolving.
So again, and I'm asking the question, and so your committee and the report we'll get at Chairman Jasser's Jasper's mentioned, it kind of leans into the THC portion of it is, more needed today, or maybe there's more experience with it today than it was in the past. Mm-hmm. So my question goes along the lines, specifically as the last gentleman's, is vape, if a store had, or an individual place had no vaping, you wouldn't necessarily be able to vape this product. If it said no vaping, you can't vape with it. That would, whatever current law.
Yeah, I don't see how that law would change.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So we do that. So
now I'll say this: if I'm sitting there and I'm about to have a seizure in the middle of a McDonald's, then I'd probably take the penalty and just go ahead and hit my vape.
No.
If I
don't mean to laugh. It was just to hit your vape is what made me grin there. But no, I understand. Certainly in emergent situations. Right. But I think the folks that would do this would do that. I believe that. So the last question is this: looking at this, my concern is the changes that were made throughout, up to and including the definition of product, that we could go into. This up to 50% could go into gummies, could go into oils, could go into everything. Mm-hmm. And what my concern is, and I'm trying to put this in a question, is how do we control the bad actors? That this product looks the same at 50% as what some folks are buying at the store. That's primarily, it's CBD based, has 1 milligram of THC in it. How do we protect that from somebody? Because you could have a CBD gummy in a high school, right?
Right.
I think you can do that. How do we do that? And protect the bad actors? Because I got on my phone
simple.
An ad here that you can. It's $99. Send me. We'll approve you online for a Georgia card. Mm-hmm. How do we do that? Just
because the bad actors aren't going to go pay extra money for something that's half the strength, that's harder to get. Because they're going to go to the streets and they're going to buy dope off the streets. That's where the bad actors are going. They're not walking into a doctor's office to get something that's half of what they can get out there. That's twice the cost.
But
anybody in here can spend 30 minutes in downtown Atlanta and find weed.
I don't think this allows for.
It does not.
Okay,
and that's where the bad actors are going. They're not walking into dispensaries.
But my question, though, would you not agree that if you're a 16-year-old kid, we already said below 18, it's not good for you to take in mass quantities to abuse, as the gentleman said. So, but you could have somebody 18 or above, or your older 21 brother that have these gummies that have 50%, and I don't know, if you eat a couple of those, do you get high? I mean, is that enough? I don't know.
Probably so.
So how do we? Let's assume somebody's getting them from the right people, and you're a teacher in high school and you see these gummies. How do you know those are okay, but those are not? How do you? I mean, is it?
I get it. They don't.
Okay.
I mean, you can go buy a gummy in a gas station and get high. That's state law right now. You can walk into a gas station and buy a CBD, as you call it, CBD gummy derived from hemp, Delta 8 or Delta 9. You can walk into a gas station and get high. That's where your bad actors are going. They're going to get the cheap high. This is a very expensive and arduous way to chase a high. And if that's all you care about, you're not gonna go through this process. But if you have one of these, if you have seizures, you have MS, you have mitochondrial disease, Parkinson's disease, sickle cell, you're not out chasing a high, you're out chasing treatment for your symptoms. And you are going to go through this process. And these are the only people we're talking about. The ones I just named plus others, Tourette's, severe autism, I don't even know what epidermal whatever is, Alzheimer's, I mean, AIDS. They're not chasing high, they're chasing relief. And there's a difference. There's a big difference. And that's all we're talking about. We're not talking about recreational marijuana. That is not what this bill does.
Yeah, well,
I might
I'll
interject.
get with you. Yeah, I'll get with you offline for the.
Sure.
If I might interject, and I want to thank you, Senator, for your last editorial about this. But before this thing gets out of hand, I want to tell you, we're going to probably have to come back either tomorrow or the next day on this. And I apologize to the folks that were here to testify today. But I want to thank you for clarifying something. I want every member of this committee to hear this. Gummies aren't legal, THC gummies. Right now it's oil. And I want you to remember something. We're not talking about recreational marijuana. We're talking about medical marijuana. You know, I jumped on this back years ago when I was chairing public safety, when Alan Peake was in the House. And that's the therapeutic value of something that's not made in a clinical laboratory. Y'all remember the term opioids? If y'all remember that term that I said then and I still say, that anything that's grown naturally has got to be better than something made in a laboratory. Quite frankly, my position hadn't changed. Something that God grows naturally. We legalized this product under the strict conditions of it being medical. For all the talk about gummies and getting high and all of that, let me tell you something. I made a prediction when this very committee that I sat on with Senator Brass and Gravely, that all the criteria that was put into this to basically put these guardrails up, I said then that we're going to make this stuff so expensive that folks are going to go out there and buy street weed, because you can buy street weed a whole lot cheaper than you can buy this. But for these people who have a medical condition that needs some kind of relief, they want something that has been basically tested as pure, as not adulterated, and that's what we're dealing with. So we're not dealing with gummies, we ain't dealing with grass, we ain't dealing with anything. If I understand the bill right from the senator, he's raising that elevation of the strength, and he's giving doctors the ability to give another way for those people who need a quicker relief than waiting around for an hour for something to digest in their system. Is that pretty well what I'm getting to here?
Yes, sir.
Now, I want to thank the members of this committee. We convene in about 1 minute. So I'm going to recess this meeting, and we will be in touch with y'all about the next available room that we can meet in, and it may be tomorrow or it may be on Thursday. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. My apologies. Senator Brass, if you would kindly join us, and we're going to resume where we left up now. Yesterday, we had a sign-up sheet, since this is the first time this bill has been heard. Are any of these people here this morning that want to be heard? We had a number of folks. Looks like we got another, because so we do have people who want to testify. All right. We've got 2 sign-up sheets now. All right, I'm going to do my best to match these 2 sheets for testimony. Yesterday, we heard the gist of the bill. There had been some discussion yesterday, and I want to remind everybody on the committee. Mr. McDonald, if you don't mind, I'm going to talk about this bill a little bit. Yesterday, Senator Brass presented his bill. It's really quite simple. What this bill does. It changes the definition on how cannabis, medical cannabis is interpreted, raises the limits of prescription from 5 to 50. What else was it? It did something else. I'm trying to remember. Oh, the delivery system went to the vape, so that these folks.
Correct. And then on the conditions, we added lupus and changed Crohn's disease to IBS.
Right.
That was at the recommendation of DPH and Composite Medical Board. And then we removed severe or end stage for most but not all of the illnesses, and then replaced it with a phrase where the positives of the medicine could outweigh the negatives of the symptoms.
Very good. The bill was presented yesterday, and I remind everybody that we're not talking about recreational, we're talking about medical. And there'd been a lot of discussion over the years, and I think Senator Brass probably said it more appropriately. When we passed the original medical marijuana bill, then we went in the next term and we started working on this, how to make it work. It's unique that we have the federal government that still's got this classified, marijuana classified in the same classification as heroin. But it has proven, apparently has proven effects that are beneficial to sick people, people that have this litany of diseases and all. Senator Brass did something that should have already been done, and that's raise the standards. At that time, we were dealing with a new source, and we set it at 5 milligram, and we're raising it to 50, which seems to be the middle grade or standard across the country, and the delivery system. So that being said, we're going to, well, we got a question over here, but I'm sorry. So at that point, we're going to take some testimony and let you make a statement. I would ask those of y'all when you're speaking to try to be as brief as you possibly can. And if there's any redundancy, then so be it. But let's move on, because you get extra points in this committee for brevity. All right. First up, Teresa Yarborough.
My name is Teresa Yarborough. I'm the director of the Georgia Cannabis Industry Alliance. I am a pot smoker since I was 14 years old. I'm 73 today. I've cured hepatitis C with marijuana oil on the illegal front. First of all, I want to say none of this is working for us as consumers, as hemp retailers. What he's trying to do here is create a recreational product under the guise of medical marijuana. This has nothing to do with patients. These companies have been hemorrhaging money since the day they started. And it seems like the only way the legislators know how to remedy that situation for them is to destroy our other cannabis industries here in Georgia. I'm not for that. I don't think anybody here is for that. If they can't make it on their merits, let's go back and rediscuss this. But this is not working for anybody but them. That's all I got to say. Oh, one other thing. Out here on the street, y'all talk about street weed. It's like 27 to 30% THC. It's whole plant. It's not extracted THC that's done in a laboratory.
You have a question, I believe. Mr. Carpenter.
Yeah, thanks so much. Ma'am, if you don't mind.
Just so we're clear, I want to make sure I understand what your testimony. You support pot smoking, yes, but you don't support raising levels for people with medical conditions.
I don't support a monopoly in the cannabis industry.
Okay, so how you currently sell another product?
I don't have anything to sell. I represent the retailers, the wholesalers,
which retailers? But
not medical. This is not medical. When I go to the doctor and he prescribes me a medication, what happens next after I get my prescription? They want me to come back in and follow up. How's this working for you? Have you had any side effects? Do we need to increase your dosage or decrease your dosage? This is not medical. This is a scam. This is marijuana being sold under the guise of medical marijuana, and it's just not.
Okay, thank you.
If I may ask a question, what would be your alternative to this?
Well, my real alternative would be to start over, decriminalize. Is it fair for companies to be making billions of dollars in this industry and us still be able to be arrested? It should have started with decrim and then worked its way up.
So you're an advocate of legalization.
Decriminalization. This is legalization, what we've got, and it hasn't worked for anybody. 26,000 card holders in a state of 11 million. We don't want it. Nobody wants it.
So the only alternative would be to buy street weed.
Well, right now, that's what I do.
All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right. Yolanda Bennett. We have Ms. Bennett here.
Did you bring her?
Welcome.
Hello, everyone. My name is Yolanda Bennett with the Georgia Medical Cannabis Society. I'm coming to you today not from the Georgia Medical Cannabis Society, but I'm coming to you today as a patient that needs my meds. Now, I'm coming to you not just to smoke or to get high. What I'm coming to you for is to ask you all to make sure that we have access to our meds. I know a lot of people talk about street weed and all this other stuff. That's something that we, the patients, aren't looking to get. What we are looking to get is some type of relief. And this particular bill right here has access to more products for us. We're able to have inhalation. Do you realize last year when SB 494 passed, my meds were taken away. The smokables were taken away from me. The smokable raw flower was taken away from me. However, this particular bill has inhalation, which is a start. We already know we can't get to point A to point Z all at one time. We got to go here, 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 especially here in Georgia, because we have to understand the concept of the landscape. And a lot of people who are caught up. A lot of people ask, why do we need a medical cannabis program? The reason why we need a medical cannabis program is because in 2014, that's when the raid stopped for medical cannabis dispensaries. Like right now, we do have adult use markets. But the thing is, at any given time, the DEA can go shut it down. Why take away medical cannabis if we don't have any protections? If we go ahead and go straight to adult use, then we have nothing to stand on. Let me tell you the act so you all can look it up for yourself. This is what Americans for Safe Access did. They stopped the raids. They stopped people from the DEA from coming down on the dispensaries. This is why I'm passionate about this. Having a medical cannabis card allows patients to travel. My condition does not stay home with me. So, okay, yeah, y'all pass it where it's decrim here, no cards. But then I travel somewhere else. I can't take my meds with me. It is the Commerce, Justice, and Science Appropriations Act. If you want to look this up, this right here is what patients are protected. This is more than just getting high. Yes, I would love to have natural flower. I would. But it's so many legislators that need education. So many people need education. And that's why Georgia Medical Cannabis Society and other organizations out here who are providing education for the public. So all I ask you all to think about the patients. When you think about the patients and not about just getting high, that's just like telling a diabetic, look, we're going to do away with insulin because we're going to find a better route. Don't take something away without having something in place. So I compel you all to vote yes for SB 220.
You have a question.
I have a question for Senator Brass. I don't have a question for you.
Gotcha.
Thank you. I appreciate your testimony. So I'm new to this committee, and I just have started getting into this, and I just had a question for you. So some of these testimonies were confusing to me. So your bill, we're just doing it for oil. That's correct? Just oil? Is that right?
So oil is already allowed in current law at 5%.
Right.
We're adding vaping, and
Right.
as I discussed yesterday, there are patients that have one of these conditions or several of these conditions that would need immediate relief and can't sit around and wait an hour or 2 hours for the oil to set into their system.
Right. So, but I guess my question was, this is only increasing for oil from 5 to 50, we're not talking about selling marijuana in the flower or
No.
in rolling joints and all that
No,
stuff.
that now, full disclosure, that was in my original bill.
Okay.
And I negotiated that out with the chairman of Health and Human Services in the
Okay.
Senate. So
Okay, I just wanted to be clear to make sure I was understanding. We're just doing oil. It ain't nothing to do with
that's
smoking,
correct.
Rolled joints and all that stuff.
Correct. That is
Okay.
not part of this bill.
Okay, thank you.
All right, now you lit up a few questions. Number 24.
Yeah, quick question about the vaping. Is that like we see people vaping, or is this more like an asthma inhaler, or how's that administered?
It's probably going to be more like what you see people vaping.
Oh, okay.
I mean, vape pens, and I don't know how you vape, but
I got you.
I know vape pens.
All right. Mr. Williams?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, I know you spent a good bit of time in Washington, D.C. As Chief of Staff for former Congressman Len Westmoreland, but educate me. If it's still against federal law, how is it legal for anybody, even with a medical dispensary, to be able to transport any kind of THC product across state lines federally?
Sure, Representative, I think that would have been a better question asked in 2019 when we passed the original version.
But
and really, you can date it back to before I got here. I believe 2016. The state, you know, I think you could argue. You could argue that the state, the federal government is failing to act, and so the states decided to take it in its own hands. So.
Okay, I guess my whole point is states, you know, like we're gonna break federal law, we're gonna create a workaround federal law, and it just bothers me that until
I totally understand.
Until the federal government decriminalizes it, you know, what do we do? And I know it started with the Representative Peake's bill. I want to say it was 2014. It has been 10 years.
2014, okay. So either way, I got here in 2017, so it was done before I got here originally.
Okay.
But worked extensively to pass what's current law for the system. And it certainly wasn't perfect then, and it's still not perfect now. We're trying to make it better I'm just trying to increase access for the patients.
Thank you for answering my question.
Yes, sir.
All right. Ms. Bennett.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Senator, for being here. First of all, thank you for adding lupus to the list of conditions. I appreciate that. Just one concern, not a concern, but a question. I can receive my medications through mail or delivery. Does this bill prohibit or allow for the medical cannabis to be either delivered in any way?
So we added a floor amendment that allows caregivers to pick it up for you, but no, you still cannot get it by mail.
Thank you.
So you are a patient, a card-carrying patient will either have to physically go pick it up at a dispensary, or a caregiver of a card-carrying person would have to go pick it up.
All right. Of course. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I guess I'm trying to figure out, again, with Representative Chairman Williams' question. So this is obviously for medical, and you know, opioids and all those are regulated federally as well. But I guess my concern...
Not very well, but yes.
Yeah, exactly. That's where I was going, so thank you. I would much rather see, and there again, like I said yesterday, you know, we got a lot of, you know, veterans with PTSD, and I would much rather see them use this, and you might have somebody that's here that could, you know, I think doing this oil or using this oil has a lot less side effects than being hooked on opioids to try to, you know, cure your pain. Are there any studies of that? I mean, obviously this is, like the Chairman Powell said, this is actually a natural product. I mean, I just don't see how we can go wrong by using this medical grade stuff versus taking, opioids.
Right. I think, we kind of covered it yesterday on the studies, and to Chairman Williams' point, we, with it being a Schedule I drug at the federal level, it's not allowed to be, there's no research allowed to be done on it. So any research we have is from other countries, Israel being probably I'd say one of the best. And so those types of studies are there, they're just not recognized in this country.
But they're good. The studies are pretty good.
I'm no doctor, but I think they're out there, and there's plenty of doctors. There's plenty of doctors that do agree with those studies.
Thank you.
All right. Number 25.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, I wanted to commend you for bringing this bill. I think it's a good bill. I think it is helping get needed medicine to folks that are sick that need it, and I think the increases are appropriate, and I think the opportunity for the vaping of the medicine is appropriate also for those that need quick delivery. And I just want to thank you for doing that, and thank you for answering all the questions that have been asked, Mr. Chairman, at the appropriate time.
Well, let me hold up. We've got a number of people that want to be heard.
Okay, thank you.
If I might ask the committee to hold your questions, if you have any, for the author of the bill until everybody goes through this. Mac Parnell? No?
He was just testifying in favor of one of my other bills.
All right.
Now he's against.
Who's this name?
You can put him down as a no. I've already heard his testimony. Oh, there you go. You got his letter.
Do we have a Mark Ravinda?
Raduca.
Come on up, man.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'd like to make a comment before you speak. I'd like to make a comment to the two previous people that spoke. I understand your passion. To the second person that spoke, the bill that passed last year, and this might be a good time for the committee, but last year the bill you're talking about was the hemp-based bill that was passed by the Department of Agriculture. You have two types of THC that's being used. One is from the hemp that was authorized by, I think, the Farm Act in Congress, and the other for the benefit of the committee members. I've been involved in this since we legalized the medical-based product several years ago. And it was earth-shaking at that time because of the children and a lot of the folks with physical impairments. And the problem that we face, the reason we have to go around the elbow to scratch our rear ends, is because of the Congress and the inefficiencies of the U.S. Congress, that since the 1930s, marijuana has always been classified as a dangerous drug, the same as heroin, and it's, kind of crazy for that. But over the years, there's probably been more money spent through law enforcement activity, and it was really a cash product to them of going out and looking for folks. Now, my understanding from the public safety arena is that there's a lot of jurisdictions that have already decriminalized possession of marijuana. But what we had attempted to do a few years ago with medical-based marijuana was to have a pure product, something that there was no possibilities it was adulterated or anything such as that. I remember meeting with families a few years ago that would have cook-offs on a Saturday morning for their children. And these were families that would get together and they would buy marijuana and they would boil it down, they would press it, and they would do the oil, anything to help those children. And I don't want the committee members to, those of y'all who weren't there at that time, to lose sight of the fact that this is a medical product. As I had said yesterday, that a representative had said just a minute ago, I want to remind y'all that this is for the betterment of folks. There's no medical testimony that I have ever heard that said that marijuana was harmful. To my knowledge, I don't know anybody that's ever died from smoking marijuana unless they stepped out in front of a bus. And that's the difference in the two. One is the hemp-based THC is used in drinks. It's used in other products, and hopefully you'll be hearing from that at some point during this next few weeks. So that being said, to the folks that spoke, I appreciate what you said. I would encourage, especially the first speaker, I understood what you said about the hypocrisy of the system, and it is a hypocritic system. But what we've done in the state of Georgia is all we could do. So I would encourage you to educate your legislators, or those that you know, to move forward with whatever you wish them to move forward to. But more importantly, if you don't have the name and the phone numbers and the contacts of your U.S. senator and congressman, if you'll touch base with my office, we'll be glad to give you those contacts and urge them to move forward, to take the binders off of the states to do what they need to do, or whatever they desire to do. Yes, ma'am, I'm sorry.
No worries. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. My name's Marty Riveda. I'm out of Roswell. So 5 years ago, my family was blindsided by my son's high-potency THC addiction. And over those last 5 years, long story short, I'm the lucky one. My son's in recovery and doing quite well. However, over the last 5 years, I have engaged with many parents who have been within our recovery community in hopes of helping their children who are addicted to high-potency THC. These parents are impacted because they've lost their children due to high-potency THC psychosis and ultimately committing suicide. Permanent impairment, mental impairment, due to the use of high-potency THC and psychosis. I personally know a family who can't leave their home for an hour because they can't leave their 24-year-old son at home alone. And then I also have an acquaintance whose son died from an overdose. The environment he lived in was that his father used medical prescribed marijuana, and that's where his addiction started, by having access to that in his father's home. And ultimately, his addiction grew into other substances, including pills, and he died of an overdose of fentanyl. So high-potency THC is not, it does impact families. It's killing our youth on a regular basis. I've moved from corporate America to being a parent coach. I work with parents who are struggling with their children, who are, majority of them started with high-potency THC. It's a gateway drug. And so I'm just here to share my experience that the high-potency THC is impacting our youth. It's killing our youth. And increasing medical marijuana to 50% is going to impact our youth. If they are addicted, they will find a way to use it. They will find access. And if they get to this higher potency, it will kill them. Thank you.
Could you explain what is high potency? What is high potency THC? I've never heard that term, but.
That would be anything above, I'm going to allow Dr. Raduca and Michael Memper from Georgia, or Britt Paramore can speak to that, sir. I'm a concerned parent. I don't do the science, but I do know that it's typically the THC oil, and I do understand that it has approximately a 95% potency. So it's not innocuous.
Mr. Chairman, if you'll allow, so the 95% that I think she's referring to is high concentrate, and there is states that do allow that. I believe Florida is one of them. They sell it. It's like almost like a tar, and they're considered a medical only state, and they have 95%. We're talking about almost half of that, so 50.
Very good.
I had a question for you. I'm sorry to make you sit down, but sorry for what's going on with your family, and appreciate you coming in. So I'm just curious, did your son have medical marijuana? How did he? I'm just curious about your story as far as where did he get it from, and how did he use it? Did he get it? Where did he get it from?
Honestly, sir, I just know that my son had access to it anywhere, anytime, anyhow he wanted. So it's not specifically medical, but my concern is that if this higher potency is out there and available in a medical form or just whatever form, that it will be accessed and our youth can be damaged by it.
So I guess what I was asking is, obviously there's a lot of stuff out there that is bought illegally, and I know gas stations have all this stuff, and like I said, I'm sorry for your what's going on with your son, but I don't think that the medical marijuana, what we're trying to do here, what Senator's trying to do is people are going to get stuff if they're hooked to it, and unfortunately they're getting it at these stores. So I understand what you're saying. I just had a question as far as where he was getting it and how that works, if he was getting it from somebody that already has medical marijuana. But thank you for your...
Yeah, so my personal story isn't directed with medical marijuana, but on a daily basis, I'm talking to parents, a new parent, every day that your child is addicted to high-potency THC. I have the one incident where the youth was living in a home with medical marijuana and had access to it. So if they have that higher potency, we're just looking at expediting the addiction.
Right. Wouldn't you agree that that's the parents' fault for having access? Just like if they had, O.C.G.A, what I'm saying? It's not really the...
Addiction's nobody's fault. So
no, I get
it's
that.
It's a disease.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
Trust me, my mom's struggled with it all of my life, so I understand what you're going through, so I apologize for that. But I just, you can abuse prescribed drugs all the time, unfortunately. So that's why I was just curious if he had got a hold of it. Thank you for coming, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. I want to thank you, and I have a comment to make, but it may be, it's just a freak of nature. But when people want something, then they're going to get it. We've seen it during Prohibition. We saw what happened during the Prohibition era when they made alcohol illegal. It rose to the crime, rose to the organized crime and things like that. The people want what they're going to want, and if it's legalized, and in your case, if it's legal or through these folks that are doing the tested stuff, hopefully they won't get a hold of that. Hopefully we won't see any more of this type of action. But since street weed seems to be the most prevalent drug out there today, I don't know where we're going to go with that. So, all right, Mr. Paramore.
Hello, thank you for allowing me to speak. My name's Britt Paramore. I'm a licensed therapist. I have a practice in Cherokee County, Forsyth County, and North Fulton. And primarily we treat children, adolescents, and young adults with either substance use disorders or what we call SPMI, or severe and persistent mental illness. I'm also an adjunct professor of clinical psychology and do research, both here at different hospitals and universities in the United States and in Israel. Along with my research, I also provide clinical services for Cherokee County juvenile courts and for DFACs. And I'm an expert witness on this topic and have been made an expert witness on this topic in several different counties doing testimony on this. And so in 2019, I started to see patients coming in, teenagers who had all the signs of schizophrenia, which is really rare in a teen. It does happen, though. It's called early onset. Almost always when it happens, though, there's a family history of it, and or they've been using methamphetamine, which can cause something called stimulant-induced psychotic disorder. But none of these kids had a family history. None of them had been using meth. All they had been using is what they told me were carts. I didn't know what a cart was. I asked them. They said it was a THC product. I didn't think a THC product could cause this, so I thought I just had a rare case that first time. 2 weeks later, another kid comes in, 16 years old, same presentation, full-blown schizophrenia, no family history, no amphetamine usage. At that time, there was no research in the United States done on this. There was some abroad. We've known for 50 years that if someone has a precursor for developing a condition like schizophrenia, like family history, the use of any THC product can speed that process up, but there had never been a causal effect. In other words, there had never been a patient that anyone saw in the research who developed these symptoms by using THC who probably wasn't going to get it already because of a family history. When we noticed this in Georgia, I think we were the first practice to notice it. I started speaking in public a lot and started contacting some of the medical schools where I've done research. They had started seeing it too. So from that point to now, this is my sole area of research. So much so that I'm finishing my doctoral dissertation right now, and I'm having to find another school because I have to find a professor who's going to be interested in letting me do this research for my doctoral dissertation. And so I'll give you just a little bit of the research. I do presentations on this at conferences for accountability court judges, for criminal justice coordinating committee, addiction counselors, psychologists, psychiatrists. I also have psychiatry practice. And then we also have a veterans program that's federally grant funded that is, if not, it may be the biggest veterans treatment program in the state of Georgia other than Veterans Affairs. I'm also a veteran. And so during my research, over the years, I started to discover there were more universities studying this. So I'll give you a quote by one called Dr. Eric Messamore, who is a schizophrenia researcher at Northeast Ohio Medical University, which is one of the leading universities for schizophrenia research in teens and young adults. Last year, he said that the causal effect of high levels of THC causing schizophrenia in the developing brain is quite simply the highest impact, most well replicated research in schizophrenia research today. There are lots and lots and lots of journal articles from the Journal of Addiction Medicine, Journal of Psychiatry, that really seem to indicate the exact same thing. As a therapist who practices, and I supervise graduate students who are becoming psychologists or psychotherapists, so I get to collaborate with a lot of practitioners all over America, and those of us who treat children, adolescents, and young adults, we're all seeing it. And, you know, I'm concerned that this committee has not heard the full story about the damage higher THC products can cause. I know there was a question about what is high THC concentrate. The national average for level of THC in the flower is about 15.8%. Back in the 90s, it was 2%. There are THC concentrates that are in an oil that people vape that can get up to 98%. When we first started seeing this in Cherokee County, because of one of the boards I serve on, Drug-Free Cherokee and Cherokee Focus, I also do some advisory work for the multi-county drug task force. And so they started trying to figure out where people were getting these higher THC oils and having them tested. In the beginning, they were about 60% THC. Where they were coming from were medical marijuana dispensaries in California, and they were being mailed here and sold illegally. Now, when it comes to the developing brain, we now know, and this is just a conservative estimate, that brain development occurs most from birth to age 6, then from 11 to age 18, but from 18 to 25, or 26 in males, 18 to 25 in females, there's still significant brain development. I have seen a number, 20 or more, patients who didn't begin using higher THC oils until they were in their early 20s, who developed what is called cannabis-induced psychotic disorder, but it's the exact same symptoms as schizophrenia. Unfortunately, we think that it's permanent, unless something can be figured out to reverse it. And the medicines that we use on patients who have schizophrenia not caused by this, they're not working. I have a specialty in the treatment of psychotic disorders and schizophrenia. And so everything I'm telling you, this is not my personal opinion. Right? This is my clinical opinion, but the research and the science is rock solid. And so I would implore this committee to look into some of this research for yourself. Don't take my word for it before making a decision that's going to cause significant harm in our teens and young adults. And so, and that's.
Thank you for your testimony. I just want to thank you for what you're doing in this field, because I actually know a kid that experienced this. So we coached him in rec league football, same age as my son, and he just lost it a couple of years ago. So he's got a younger brother that's playing ball at my kid's school now, and I see him at the ball games, and he's just a shadow.
The first kid I treated, 16 years old, had a full football scholarship to go play wide receiver at Florida. Unless something can be done, he won't ever be able to live on his own again. What I'm seeing in my practice is heartbreaking. I make this statement a lot. This is an incredibly bold statement I'm about to make, but I stand behind it. I'm a lot more worried about this than I am the fentanyl outbreak and crisis. Here's why. Most of these kids that I treat, they're not going to go to the street and buy heroin or fentanyl. But the perception of risk for all things THC is so low that they don't know that there's a harm. And to be honest with you, if it was just 2% flower, I wouldn't spend all my time, energy, and resources researching this. This is something in my career I've decided to draw a line in the sand because I know what I'm seeing and I know what the research says. I have a feeling that the cannabis industry knows this research as well. There is some contradictory research out there, but I think the research indicating this causal effect is much more substantiated. And some of the contradictory research, you have to look at the funding of that research. As I mentioned, I also do research in Israel for Hebrew University, and Israel has been researching this. And Israel, one of the things they're really trying to determine amongst a lot of other researchers is, what is the threshold level of THC? In other words, what is the level of THC that, if crossed and used, the disease process starts. What I've seen is when the disease process starts, I'll start to see certain symptoms. And if someone quits at that point, I have seen it reversed. But some of them go past what I call the point of no return in disease progression. And that's probably a bit outside the scope of my testimony here.
All right, you have another question or two, Mr. McCollum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your testimony today. I had actually a couple of questions, if the chairman will allow me. One question is so do you agree or disagree that if you have cancer or seizure disorder or something like that, and I mean, obviously you're in severe pain, do you agree or disagree that THC would be a better alternative than opioids or morphine?
The research strongly suggests that it's not the THC, it's the CBD and other alkaloids that have the therapeutic effect.
Okay.
And what I'm concerned about is people of the age, they still have a developing brain, getting their hands on 50% THC concentrates, because in my clinical opinion and many others, that has already passed the threshold for disease progression to begin.
Well, I understand that, and thank you. So my second question, if I may, Mr. Chairman, is, so, you know, the diseases, I mean, the things that we have listed here for medical marijuana, a lot of this stuff is, these people are in severe pain, and obviously the one that's 18 years is autism, or epilepsy. So, I have a friend that has a son that's epileptic, and the oil is the only thing that pretty much really works all the time. And I understand your concern, and thank you for your research. But what you're speaking of that I feel, and you tell me if I'm wrong, is you're talking about kids that go out and find this stuff. Either they steal it from somebody that has a oil that has a prescription, or they buy it on the street, or they buy it at a gas station. This bill doesn't do anything for that. This is for people that are hurting. And then you also said, and thank you for your service. You also said that for post-traumatic. So do you don't think for PTSD, this is something that helps them at all, or?
So I'll make a couple points here. First, your acquaintance with the seizure disorder, if 5% is working, what's the need to increase it?
Well, I would say to there again for my friend that sometimes you have to increase things if it starts wearing off. But these kids, I mean, his son has seizures like multiple all day long. So I mean, if 5% isn't working and you have to increase it, what's the alternative? Is just to let him have seizures. You know what I'm saying? But and I understand what your research is saying is about as far as the making them have schizophrenia. But these people are in pain. The last thing they're concerned about is what your research. But I think, and there again, thank you. I think what you're alluding to is younger kids that are teenagers they're using this recreationally. And I've taught my kids ever since they were little, if you use meth one time, you're hooked. There's no trying it. So I feel like that, you tell me if I'm wrong, what you're alluding to is these kids are trying this stuff, they're getting hooked on it, and it's changing their brain. And unfortunately, that is a side effect. But there again, if they try anything else, cocaine, meth, or anything else on the street, they're going to be in the same situation. They're going to have a lot worse problems than schizophrenia. But there again, I think it's just educational. But what we're trying to do is help these patients. And I appreciate your testimony, but I was just wanting to see, do you think there's a use at all for THC in any level?
Thank you for your question, Congressman. Here's the misunderstanding. First off, these THC oils are coming from medical dispensaries in California. Second off, it is these kids that I treat. I also teach a class at ACE Academy, which is the alternative school in Cherokee County where kids are expelled. The kids in my class were expelled for substance-related instances. 97% of them is for smoking THC concentrates, and so.
Which is illegal, and then also in California it's 95%, and they're mailing it here, which is illegal. That's why we're doing 50 here.
But the first patients I started seeing who were developing this were smoking 60% THC concentrates. Mm-hmm. One smoked it 4 times before he developed these conditions. When it comes to treating these conditions, I have no issue with that clinically. I've never seen substantiated research that indicates 50% THC is better than 5%. When it comes to autism, which is another area that I'm involved in, there is a product going through drug trials in Australia right now before it comes to the U.S. to do phase 4 trials. That is a cannabinoid alkaloid that has no THC in it. It's similar to CBD. I can't remember the name of it. We've never seen anything so helpful for people with autism. What I'm hearing is it's revolutionizing it. I know the autistic people that I treat, it is literally impossible for me to get them to stop smoking pot, right? But the important thing is it's not the THC for this product because it has no THC in it. And then once again, these kids that I treat are not going to go to the street and get methamphetamine, right? But there's the perception of risk for all things THC is so low, they don't realize it can harm them. And then when our state is saying it's okay for people with these 19 or 20 conditions to take 50% THC, that further lowers the perception of risk. And when it comes to veterans, I've had a number of veterans who started using higher THC products who have developed this because they started using it when they were 19, 20, 21 years old. Now, this does not occur in someone whose brain is already developed. And in full transparency, we've never seen this occur in an adult over 27 years old. We've seen acute psychosis events. We've never seen it persist, though.
All right, let's move on. We have one more question for you. Number 26, that would be Mr. Jaspers.
Thank you. Thank you for what you're doing for people I live in the Pickens, Cherokee area, for what you're doing for kids there.
Thank you.
I guess I'm following Mr. McCollum's questioning. Yes, I'm sorry I wasn't here for all of it. I was in a health committee meeting with the chairman on a different bill. But do you feel that any level of THC is appropriate? What is your...
The research strongly suggests, even though there is contradictory research, that it is the CBD and other cannabinoid alkaloids that are having the therapeutic effect, not the THC. It's very difficult to get all of the THC out and still have the therapeutic effect of CBD. So it's necessary to leave some THC in. What I'm told to get, and I'm not a biochemist, but that's what I'm told, but I have never seen research suggesting increasing THC levels increases the therapeutic effect. If I'm wrong, I would love to see that research.
Yeah, because the current way we have it is that's up to 5% in an oil. Mm-hmm. That from what all I can see has worked. You know, I guess because it does have the other derivatives in it that are being the effect.
Correct.
I guess I'm just having see, you're kind of either yeah or no. There's no middle ground on this because I see the CBD has been something that's really taken over the market because it is effective in so many different ways besides getting people high also. But thank you for what you do.
Yeah,
It's
and then
very
just-
much needed.
Thank you. And once again, I'm not here to give you my personal opinion, and so I do give a lot of black and white answers because I'm a researcher, and we form a hypothesis and then try to prove that hypothesis to make it black and white.
Well, we thank you for giving your testimony, and I appreciate it, and you probably just given me a little bit more validity to my attitude toward life that, you know, people do things, and we can't control what our children do. I've always said that when it came to alcohol, there was a reason that we have, every state has a age limit on alcohol. There's nothing you can do about folks, these kids who are wanting to do or experiment or do whatever it is they do. But they're getting this as an illegal substance. And I go back to the purpose of the bill. The bill specifically is a pathway for medical treatment of some of these severe diseases. And quite frankly, when I look at end stage of a lot of these diseases, I can't help but wonder that on end stage, does it really make any difference? Because these people are on their way out, and if it's something that gives them relief, then so be it.
I agree with
I
that.
had a phone call this morning from a fellow from, I believe it was up in northwest Georgia, that had neuropathy. And it was, you could hear the pain in his voice, that what he's able to get from his marijuana THC card that he's got, not doing the work he needs. He's tried everything in the world, and he was in tears on the phone about this. So,
well, I guess my comment, I'm sorry, forgive me.
But at the same time, you know, we don't live in a perfect society. You know, alcohol is a perfect excuse for that, except some of us who do like the taste of it.
I think there's one scenario I forgot to mention, and let's take the 18-year-old who has irritable bowel syndrome. We know that 18-year-olds smoking higher THC levels have and will develop this condition. And the comment that being addicted to meth is worse than having schizophrenia, it absolutely is not. There's almost nothing worse. And this 18-year-old with irritable bowel syndrome developing an incurable permanent form of schizophrenia is doing far more harm than help. That's why I just implore you to look at the research yourself. I'll be glad to send you the 3-hour presentation I do on this, and I'll include all of my research.
Very good. Thank you so much for your testimony. Let's get back to the list. Greg
Raduca.
Mr. Raduca.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee members. Dr. Greg Raduca, on the board of Georgians for Responsible Marijuana Policy, and appreciate the seriousness with which the committee is listening to testimony, especially Mr. Paramore's. Appreciate that greatly, because THC, agencies like mine are small nonprofits, and I apologize, we have not done as good a job as we could have in past years. I've been doing this, following this since 2014, of educating legislators about THC. Unfortunately, the THC in recreational marijuana is the same THC as it is in medicinal. THC is THC, and so it is an addictive substance. So my heart goes out, because I'm been a treatment provider, prevention provider for 50 years, treating kids at Ridgeview Institute for cannabis use disorder, other drug disorders. So my heart goes out to people who are struggling, like the person you mentioned on the phone. At the same time, And this is all said with a great respect for Senator Brass. When we've been on the same team on some bills, I enjoy that a lot more than being on this side. But that being said, THC can be a substance that does a great deal of harm in people's lives, and I've witnessed some of that suffering. One of the things you have is a chart in your yellow folders that we provided, if you've got those. People are dying on the highways in Washington and Colorado and other states about the average of once every 3 days due to THC impairment. Unfortunately, in our state, we don't have the laws that really allow us to measure and then report THC impairment for deceased drivers or traffic accidents that have resulted in in deceased persons. I hope that can be improved in some way, but that's a whole nother bill. So you can see some of the data that THC impairment makes up about 11% of the fatal crashes in the state of Washington. And I can provide you very similar charts for states like Colorado and California that are also measuring more than we are here in Georgia. I wonder, with Georgia having twice the population of Colorado, how many of Georgians are dying on Georgia's highways each week. We mentioned veterans. There are 80,000 peer-reviewed studies on marijuana that have been done since the 60s. And some of those studies talk about veterans. And, we have 22 veterans on the average committing suicide every day. And what I've seen in my practice and what the research says is that, in short term, marijuana, THC does work, and it can alleviate anxiety, and it can alleviate depression, and it can alleviate the symptoms of PTSD. But that after a while, and this happens with kids too, the patients that I treated, in more long-term use, the peace and love drug becomes, it can result in a lot of anger, a lot of rage, more depression, more anxiety. So the research that I'm reading says it can contribute in the long run to PTSD rather than alleviate the symptoms. You also have a fact sheet in your packets that talks to this, some of the dangers that are involved. So chasing relief through THC, I really want these patients to get relief for their symptoms, but chasing relief can lead to chasing the high, unfortunately. And when you start getting into 50% THC, you take twice the recommended dosage, you can go to, the equivalent of 95, 100%. And that can lead to some of the issues that Brett was talking about. So just a real concern that it can be that serious. That also the dosage, in 1 ounce of THC, there are actually 28,350 milligrams. So if one were to take that over a period of 30 days, that would be 945 milligrams a day of THC. It only takes 10 milligrams of THC for the typical adult user to start getting high. And that's why they have standardized servings in other states of THC, limiting it to 10 milligrams. At 50% THC, 1 drop would contain a little more than 12 milligrams. So 1 drop of 50% THC would be enough to get the normal user, the new user, high. The problem with THC is that you need more and more of it over time in order to feel better. And also, over time, you can take it not just to feel better, but just not to feel bad. Because THC is so addictive, 1 out of every 3 users of THC on a regular basis develops cannabis use disorder, which is in the same chapter as opioid disorder, cocaine disorder, and cannabis use disorder is, you know, many of those folks are dependent on THC. So it's just a dangerous substance for many for that reason.
Very good. Any questions? Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
And I do remember you. You've been in front of the committee I've sat on for many years as we've gone down this path, and I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And I'm glad you did say that there was some positive effects to it. But we do, I'll reiterate what I said a while ago, we don't live in a perfect society. You know, people do get addicted, whether it's alcohol or tobacco or this. And it just seems to me that marijuana since the 60s has been such a prevalent product out there, illegal and otherwise, that folks have gotten so used to it. But what we're dealing with is medical usage. We're not in here to legalize the flower and stuff like that, even though personally I'm not too sure it wouldn't be better if the U.S. Congress would, as I said earlier, if they would take this off the list and let doctors start monitoring it and let them do the prescription, both in the delivery and in the strength to suit the illness. That would be the perfect way to go.
I sure hear you that leaving it up to the physicians seems to make a lot of sense. However, it was the physicians that, well-meaning, did overprescribe O.C.G.A and gave us the opioid crisis. If we hadn't had so many physicians overprescribing O.C.G.A, we wouldn't have had the opioid crisis that we did.
Absolutely, and there again is another argument. That we have prescription opioids and the things like that, and these type of this cannabis, medical cannabis, seems to have an effect that seems to me to be a whole lot safer than what we've seen in the opioid epidemic.
At the lower percentages, but at higher potency, you start getting into the major league stuff equivalent to some of the effects of opioids.
Right. But it all goes back to the fact that when people are in pain, they're going to do whatever it takes to seek relief.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
All right, let's see. Jodisa Gonzalez. Not here. Do we have a Avia K? Avia. Aviva. All right.
Thank you, Chairman Powell. Thank you, Senator Brass, for bringing this bill. You've both been working really hard on these issues, which maybe we should call disinterring cannabis at this point. We're kind of pulling it from the grave and reviving it. My name is Aviva, for everyone who doesn't know me. I founded the Georgia Hemp Economic Revival Organization over 10 years ago to usher in this hemp revival successfully and hopefully in a healing way. I see myself as a mediator between legislators and consumers and businesses and addiction recovery people, all that stuff. I have a lot of points to make today, but I'll keep it as brief as possible.
If I may ask, could you speed this up?
Yes,
we're losing
and I wanted to say...
We have another meeting, and I'm
Yeah,
afraid
yeah.
we're going to lose our quorum.
I'm grateful that you gave them like 20 minutes to speak, and I'm hoping to get at least 5.
Quite
I'm used to-
frankly, I didn't give 20 minutes, but nobody listens when the chairman says brevity is a high priority.
Yes, Britt is very knowledgeable, but I think I am as well. And I have 10 years is a long time to be managing what everyone is doing in this playground. And I just want to address them first because they made some points, and then I want to go on to what I wanted to say really quickly. I have a BA in child studies from Tufts University. And I studied a lot of alternative medicine. I've apprenticed herbalist, homeopaths, whatnot. So a lot of people heal through diet. And there's something called the GAPS diet that addresses schizophrenia in an amazing way. And what they found is that a lot of it is the source of the gut. So what they do is they find out that different things, whether it's THC or pesticides, can destroy the gut, which in turn actually creates brain issues, mental issues. And so there have been studies, coincidentally, on California weed, medical weed, that is poisoned with pesticides. And not only because it's possibly sprayed with pesticides, but also because cannabis is so incredible that it pulls pesticides from years ago from out of the ground. They found DDT in the cannabis. That was banned years ago. So because we have this medical weed sucking toxins out of the ground and then concentrating it into an oil, you're basically smoking or ingesting pure pesticides, very concentrated pesticides. So, of course, those can be linked to schizophrenia as well. Also, THC breaks down. It's alive. It doesn't just stay 50% potency. It actually breaks down into something called CBN. It's very complicated. Some other people can speak to it better than me. CBN can be considered a little bit more of a psychotic than THC. So if you've got old medicine laying around and a child finds it, and it's like 3 years old, it might be degraded into a substance that's a lot more toxic. And then just to our other friend's points, not only would Yolanda have to have a medical card to travel, and I support this bill, by the way, Senator Brass, not only would she have to have it to travel, but other people traveling here need medicine. And this is my biggest point today, is that all other medical programs have flower, and they also have home grow, which is so much safer. If these kids had access to flower, they wouldn't mess with the crazy edibles that taste weird. You know, they would be a slower ingestion, a quicker ingestion. Edibles are way more dangerous for traffic. They hit you maybe in 3 hours, so you don't know you're going to be disabled when you're driving. So I do think it's very imbalanced that we don't have flower in the program. And even vaping is more concentrated pesticide-wise than flower. So it is mixed up. If we just bring back the flower, you know this, we'll bring back the safety.
If I might repeat, that brevity is of a value because we're losing members and we're not talking about legalization of flower.
Well, okay, I will end my point here, since you obviously don't want a song, and that's okay. My point is that, yes, we're not talking about legalizing it, but what's the big deal? Recreational is not a big deal. It's stress release. Everyone needs stress relief. I mean, people break up with people. People have affairs because they're not relieving themselves from stress. So what's worse, holding on to this stress or allowing people to have stress relief so they can live their lives and be happy? What's the big deal? Like, why is that such a stigma to talk about? Some people take a drink, some people take a hit of weed. It's really not a big deal, and we need to grow past this issue. We really do. I'm personally not a smoker, but I think it's an ethical issue, and it's offensive to some cultures to stigmatize it. And I will end saying this. I know people who have been arrested for growing the plant medicine and giving it to an informant, saying, my mom is dying, I need the flower, I can't get it anywhere. Senator Brass knows, you made medical cannabis legal without growing the flower legal, without anything being legal for years. So what happened? My friends grew the flower for people. They were helping lots of people, and now they're in jail. Over a year, a husband and wife. They have 2 kids, chickens, dogs. Their life is a mess right now. And I hope we can do something about it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. And we've got a few more speakers, but, please remember that we're not talking about legalizing, wholesale legalization of marijuana. All right, Michael Mumber.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Representatives. I'll be 2 minutes or less. And I'm with Georgians for Responsible Marijuana Policy. I understand the faith we're putting in doctors. I've got a great doctor I respect a lot. She takes care of me. But there are a lot of doctors who are not going to be so integral or have integrity. For example, when I look at Florida, there's a company called Canna MD. They claim that they are Florida's leading network of medical marijuana doctors. And what they've gotten to the point of is saying Canna MD, and this is their website, by the way, is offering a $30 discount on physician appointments. Just mention the word pot of gold between March 14th and 21st to save money. So they're really profit motivated. They say, they list 72 conditions where you can get a medical marijuana card in Florida. And granted, they're not all listed in their Florida law. In fact, they say on their website, although the following conditions are not written into Florida's Amendment 2, the initiative indicates that other diagnosable debilitating conditions could be prescribed. And, you know, we have, I think, with all due respect to the senator, we're proposing an any condition clause where if some physician finds something where he thinks medical marijuana would benefit, then it's going to be allowed by law. And if we look at how physicians in Florida are taking that leeway, there are things in this list of 72 like nausea, overweight, insomnia, anxiety, and these are not end stage. In fact, I think we're removing the end stage from this proposal. So we're talking about nearly any condition your doctor thinks or this doctor thinks marijuana would benefit, you can get marijuana. And that's why I think our argument is that this isn't recreational, but this is about as close as you could get because it's going to be so accessible. Because these doctors are going to be the popular doctors. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, and I remind you that you're reading from a list of Florida, and this isn't Florida. Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Chairman, if you allow, I think what Mr. Mumford is also referring to was in the first version of the bill that there was a clause that added where the doctor could decide, and it did use that language of the potential benefits of such use to the patient outweigh the potential health risk. We actually struck through that provision, but I did like that language, and so I made that language apply to all of them.
Very good. And last but not least, I believe is Mr. Tom Byer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Tom Bauer. Sorry, I got a bit of a cold. Tom Bauer with Leading Age Georgia. We provide services to seniors across the continuum. In particular, we have assisted living homes, personal care homes, nursing homes, and so forth. We want to thank Senator Brass for this bill. We think it would help our clients a good bit. I'm pinch hitting for our president, so I can't cite the research, but we have talked to a lot of geriatricians and so forth, and they have given us input that they think that medical marijuana is very helpful to Alzheimer's patients, and particularly with their anxiety. And so I want to thank Senator Brass for addressing that part where in the conditions where it's no longer have to be terminal or severe, and we'd like to also thank him for the floor amendment that he mentioned before. We think it's important because we do have people we serve who are in nursing homes and so forth who cannot physically get to the dispensary, and so we appreciate that, and we very much support the bill.
Thank you so much. I don't see any questions. Now, is there anyone that I have left off? I've had two lists that I've been working from, and I think I've crossed them all over. All right. Any questions from the committee on this matter? If not, Senator, do you want to do a finish up?
Sure, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Just highlight the bullet points of exactly, I think it's about 3 or 4 main bullet points.
Yeah, so the controversial parts of the bill are the raising the THC level cap from 5% to 50%, allowing us to use vaping outside of the what's already allowed of the oil, and then removing the severe end stage from the most of the illnesses diagnoses, and there's 17 total, and then replacing that language with the potential benefits of such use to the patient outweigh the potential health risk. And I'll just say too, real quick, again, I appreciate Mr. Perrymore, Dr. Reduca, Mr. Mumper. They're on the front lines fighting a disease. Addiction is certainly a disease, as we've heard from the mother. I think we all agree with that. And I've gone and spoken at drug court, and I speak at peer treatment facilities back home, and I don't remember ever meeting anyone in there that their addiction started as a cancer patient, or their addiction started with ALS or seizures or MS or mitochondrial disease or any of the 17 listed. It didn't start with that. That disease started with something else. But it is a disease, and it's something that it takes us as a legislature, it takes folks that that are on the front lines, like the people we've heard from, and the people that we know back home that are fighting addiction. It's going to take all of us to defeat it. But there's a clear line in the sand in this state between medical and recreational. And I want to go back and answer Representative Williamson's question a little bit better. There's actually a congressional directive that was issued around 2014, 2015, and it says the feds cannot shut down state medical marijuana programs. And that, to my knowledge, that congressional directive is still active. So that's what allows us to do. But the clear line in the sand that we have in this state is that we have a tight grip on these diagnoses. We don't have 72 like Florida. And the reason we don't was because we put in a law that said DPH in conjunction with Composite Medical Board is who is going to recommend these diseases to add or take away. The other line in the sand that we drew was when states like Florida issued the initial licenses, they got sued. Well, what they did, instead of letting it play out in court, they decided to issue more licenses. This body, the legislature, we drew the line in the sand and we went to court. And we still have 6 licenses. So those are two main things that we delineate us, that draw the line in the sand between recreational use and medical use. We have done this the right way. I still think it can be better. I think there's one other line, and they brought up a great point. Maybe we start looking next at the doctors and making sure maybe only Georgia doctors should be able to do this, because the law right now is they have to have a direct relationship with that patient. So maybe that's the next thing we need to look at to make sure we have a clear line in the sand between medical and recreational, because that is not what we're talking about. This bill is strictly talking about medical marijuana for patients with one of 17 conditions.
Very good, Senator. I want to thank you, and I apologize that it's taken so many hours of getting us around because of the schedules of the last 2 days.
It's okay. We had a no vote leave, so.
And I do want to thank you for bringing this, because this is about medical relief for the medically needy, that this works for them.
Yes, sir.
Number 25.
Mr. Chairman, are you ready for a motion?
Yes, sir.
I move that for a do pass recommendation on Senate Bill 220.
Second. We have a motion and we have a second. Do we have any questions, any comments? Chairman Carpenter.
Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate the legislation. I do feel for the patients of Georgia. I just think a step from 5 to 50 is big. I'm willing to make an amendment to 25%, and then change the 2% in your pocket to 4 ounces instead of 2 ounces. Don't know if there's any love for that or not, but I'm willing to go there.
Well, we've got a couple of questions, and then we'll come back. You can make your motion. Number 17.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was going to make the motion to change it from 50 to 70% at the appropriate time.
All right, well, if you'll give me a few minutes, then we'll move that direction. Number 23.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. My comment is this. I've learned an awful lot today about the dangers of marijuana to children and those that are apparently an awful lot of them out there using it today. What I haven't heard here today is the real connection between this bill and those children acquiring those products that are causing all that problem. And quite frankly, if they're doing that now, that's an illegal activity. And if we're going to engage in that, then they're going to get it whether we pass this bill or not. And I just haven't seen anybody make that real solid connection. You can allude to it, but we just haven't seen any evidence that if we pass this bill today, there are going to be any more children using this illegal product.
Well spoken. Mr. McCollum.
Just right quick, Senator, where did, I know you said it before, where did you come up with the 50, and would you be willing to, do you think that changing that?
So we looked at 18 medical marijuana only states, and of the 18 states, there's a cap from anywhere from 50 to 70, and really Florida, you could argue, is up to, there is no cap. So we decided to go on the conservative side and go with the low end of medical marijuana only states, and so that we would still be the tied for the lowest of any cap of all medical marijuana states. And then there's the political reality. It's what I thought we could get through the Senate. I can't speak for the House.
Do you feel like that lowering that at all would be a huge detriment to your bill?
I do. I think raising it would be a detriment to the bill, but I'm at the mercy of the committee.
Very well. Well, it appears we're going to have possibly an amendment, one that's going to lower it 25 and one that's going to raise it 20. So it looks to me like a fair spot might be where the bill sits right now. But so that being said, we have a motion. And we've had a second on the bill. All right.
Yep.
You ready to be recognized?
Yep. Thank you, Chairman. So yeah, just an amendment, line 88, changing it to 25%, and then lines 101, 114, 119, 140, and 146, change it to 4 ounces instead of 2 ounces.
All right. We have a motion. Do we have a second on the gentleman's motion? Motion fails. You're batting 100, Chairman Carpenter. All right. Representative Jackson, do you wish to be recognized for a motion?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a friendly amendment to line 88 and make that 70%. And the justification, just for clarity, Mr. Chairman, I have constituents that are in need of this medical medicinal THC. And we don't want them to break the law or write legislation where they're going to have to break the law. And so by increasing it to 70, I think is the appropriate level for line 88. And so that's my friendly amendment.
All right. We have are you making that in the form of a motion?
Yes.
Do we have a second on that motion?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any comment from any of the committee members? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nay?
No.
Well, I think that's pretty overwhelming. And I think we're right back in the same posture that I originally said. We added and we subtracted, right back at the center. Now, if there's no further amendments, all in favor of the bill as proposed, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
All right. I think the ayes have it, but does anybody want a show of hands? No? All right, the ayes have it. And Senator, your bill is going forward the way it is, hopefully knowing, and I don't mean this in any disrespect for the Senate, but if this bill goes through the way it is, it won't have to come back to your door over there.
Be great.
Because we do know at times how dysfunctional the process can be.
Yes, sir.
And I want to thank you, sir, and thank everybody for being here today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd be honored for you to carry it.
And I'm hoping that you'll see that House Bill 74 gets on the calendar sooner. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, man.